The fluorescent lights hummed, keyboards clicked, phones buzzed. It was just another Tuesday at Smith and Company. Sunlight streamed through the glass windows, revealing a bustling office space. Employees hunched over their desks, coffee mugs warming their hands. An air of routine pervaded the atmosphere. No one suspected the day would take a sharp turn. No one anticipated the eruption that would shatter the normalcy. It was a day that began like any other, but would end far from ordinary. Michael, the office manager, exuded an air of superiority. His presence was commanding, almost overbearing, and it was clear to everyone that he was a man used to getting his way. His sharp suits and polished shoes were a testament to his meticulous nature and his desire to project an image of unassailable authority. His face, permanently fixed in a scowl, intimidated those around him. It was as if his expression was a mask he wore to keep people at a distance, to ensure that no one would dare challenge his position. His eyes, cold and calculating, seemed to pierce through anyone who dared to meet his gaze. He moved through the office with a swagger, his booming voice echoing through the room. Every step he took was deliberate, every gesture calculated to reinforce his dominance. His confidence was palpable, almost suffocating, and it left little room for anyone else to shine. David, on the other hand, was quiet and unassuming. He preferred to blend into the background, to observe rather than to command. His demeanor was calm and collected, a stark contrast to Michael's aggressive presence. David's quiet strength was a source of comfort to those who knew him well. His gentle demeanor and quick wit made him a favorite among colleagues. David had a way of making people feel at ease, of drawing them out of their shells. His laughter was infectious, and his ability to listen and empathize made him a trusted confidant. Their differences, however, ran deeper than personality. It was not just their mannerisms or their approach to work that set them apart, but their very backgrounds and life experiences. Michael and David were products of two very different worlds, and this shaped their perspectives in profound ways. Michael, a product of privilege, harbored a deep-seated prejudice against minorities. His upbringing in an affluent neighborhood had insulated him from the struggles faced by those less fortunate. This lack of exposure bred a sense of superiority and entitlement, which manifested in his interactions with others. David, a black man who had climbed his way up from humble beginnings, was acutely aware of the invisible wall that separated him from his boss. His journey had been fraught with challenges and obstacles, each one a testament to his resilience and determination. Despite his achievements, he knew that in Michael's eyes, he would always be seen as an outsider. This awareness fueled his drive to succeed, not just for himself, but for those who looked up to him as a beacon of hope and possibility. The tension had been building for weeks. A misplaced file, a missed deadline, a simple misunderstanding. Each incident fueled Michael's simmering anger. Today it was a report delivered minutes past the deadline that proved to be the catalyst. "Incompetent!" Michael roared, his face contorted with rage. He hurled the report at David, the papers scattering across the floor. "This is useless! You're useless!" The words, laced with venom, hung in the air, sharp and stinging. The office fell silent. The usual hum of keyboards and muted conversations ceased abruptly, as if someone had pressed a universal pause button. Every eye was glued to the scene unfolding before them. It was as if time itself had slowed down, each second stretching into an eternity. David, his face flushed, felt a surge of humiliation. He had always prided himself on his composure, but today was different. Today, the weight of unspoken words and unresolved conflicts bore down on him. He bent down to retrieve the scattered papers, his hands trembling slightly. Each piece of paper seemed to mock him, a testament to his momentary lapse in control. "Don't you dare talk to me like that," David said, his voice low and controlled. The words were measured, but the intensity behind them was unmistakable. The words, though spoken softly, carried the weight of years of suppressed anger. It was a confrontation that had been brewing for a long time, simmering beneath the surface. Michael, his face now a mask of fury, lunged at David, his fist connecting with David's jaw. The impact was swift and brutal, a culmination of pent-up frustrations and unspoken grievances. A collective gasp echoed through the office. The onlookers, frozen in their tracks, could hardly believe what they had just witnessed. It was a moment that would be etched in their memories forever, a stark reminder of the fragile veneer of workplace civility. Section 5. A moment of clarity. Time seemed to stand still. The echo of the blow reverberated through the room, the sound deafening in the sudden silence. Michael stared at his hand, his own actions seeming foreign to him. The look on David's face, a mixture of pain and disbelief, pierced through the haze of Michael's rage. For the first time, Michael saw David, not as a subordinate, not as a stereotype, but as a human being. Shame washed over him, cold and suffocating. The following days were a blur for Michael. He was suspended from work, facing disciplinary action and possible legal repercussions. The weight of his actions pressed down on him, heavy and inescapable. He spent his days in a fog of guilt and remorse, the image of David's face seared into his mind. He began to understand the depth of his prejudice, the ugliness he had harbored for so long. He knew he had a long road ahead, a journey of self-reflection and atonement. David, nursing a bruised jaw and a wounded spirit, grappled with his own emotions. Anger warred with sadness, resentment with a deep-seated fatigue. The incident had brought to the surface years of microaggressions, of subtle slights that he had learned to ignore. He received an outpouring of support from colleagues, their words of comfort offering little solace. He knew that forgiveness was the higher road, but the path seemed treacherous and uncertain. Could he truly forgive the man who had inflicted such pain, both physical and emotional? Weeks later, a letter arrived for David. It was from Michael, handwritten and filled with remorse. He apologized for his actions, acknowledging the pain he had caused. He didn't ask for forgiveness, but expressed a deep regret that took David by surprise. He wrote about his journey of self-discovery, his attempts to confront his own biases. He spoke of attending diversity workshops, of engaging in difficult conversations with himself and others. He even shared his decision to volunteer at a local community center working with underprivileged youth. David reread the letter several times, each word resonating deeply. The letter was from Michael, a name that once brought warmth, but now stirred a complex mix of emotions. David's hands trembled slightly as he held the paper, the inked words blurring momentarily as tears welled up in his eyes. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself, and began to read again. He saw a glimmer of sincerity in Michael's words, a genuine desire to change. Michael had written about his regrets, his mistakes, and his hopes for redemption. The letter was filled with heartfelt apologies and promises to make amends. David could sense the struggle and the pain behind each sentence, the weight of guilt that Michael carried. It was clear that Michael was reaching out, hoping for a chance to rebuild what was broken. He knew that forgiveness was a process, not a destination. It wasn't something that could be granted overnight, nor was it something that could be demanded. Forgiveness required time, effort, and a willingness to heal. David had been through a lot, and the wounds were still fresh. He needed to take things one step at a time, to allow himself the space to process his emotions and to find his own path to healing. He also knew that Michael's journey was his own. Michael had to face his own demons, to confront the consequences of his actions, and to find his own way to redemption. David couldn't do that for him, nor could he carry the burden of Michael's guilt. Each person had their own path to walk, their own battles to fight. David had to focus on his own journey, on finding his own peace and sense of self-worth. David decided to focus on his own healing, on reclaiming his sense of self-worth. He started to engage in activities that brought him joy and peace. He spent time in nature, meditated, and took up jogging. These small steps helped him to reconnect with himself, to find moments of tranquility amidst the chaos. He realized that his well-being was paramount, and that he needed to nurture his own soul before he could even think about forgiving others. He responded to Michael's letter, acknowledging his efforts but offering no promises of forgiveness. David's response was measured and thoughtful. He expressed his appreciation for Michael's honesty and his willingness to change. However, he made it clear that forgiveness was not something that could be given lightly. It was a journey that they both had to undertake separately, and only time would tell if they could find a way to reconcile. It was a small step, a fragile hope in the face of deep-seated pain. The act of responding to Michael's letter was significant in itself. It was a sign that David was willing to open the door, even if just a crack, to the possibility of healing. The pain was still there, raw and intense, but so was the hope. It was a delicate balance, a fragile hope that needed to be nurtured with care and patience. The future remained uncertain, but for the first time since the incident, a sliver of light pierced through the darkness. David didn't know what the future held, but he felt a sense of relief, a small but significant shift in his heart. The journey ahead was long and uncertain, but he was no longer alone in the darkness. There was a glimmer of hope, a fragile light that promised the possibility of healing and reconciliation. And for now, that was enough.